Hello, hello, good evening. I was a bit lost between all the all the buttons of YouTube. Yeah. So, welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. And yeah, today we'll speak about the zip file format, which is everywhere used in so many formats. You're just like it's crazy that this format is used more and more, whereas it should probably die. Anyway, we'll see why. So first, uh, originally it's called PKZIP, and PKZIP was created by Philip Walter Katz. Okay, and this guy was his story is interesting. The lawsuit, the alcohol, and whatever. Yeah, interesting story. So Philip Katz they gave its initials, PK to PKZIP, which is why you have these names in the PK in the structures of zip files. Now, what else? Um, Another thing, the specifications of zip are still uh, called the upnode.txt. It's still updated, as you see, the latest revision. So it started in '89, and the latest revision is 2022. So not only it's written in text in a very not necessarily easy to read way. I mean, it's readable, but there are more modern stuff. But more importantly, one thing that kind of irritates me, or is a permanent problem, is that the structures have no official name. It's like they are called local file header signature, like they don't have a kind of small name. And even worse is that many structures actually have a paragraph to define them. So the name of this variable is size of this offset of start of central directory with respect to start. So basically every implementation has to make up a name for the name of this member of the structure, which is a bit crazy. Even the official structures end of central directory record. So yeah, this shows you that it's and it's still kept the same. So it's a bit crazy, even though this specification, although started in 1989, is still being updated. I mean, okay, 3 years ago. So yeah, that was my rant about the specification. But it doesn't help. It shows that even though this is used everywhere, but there is actually even though it's used everywhere, the yeah the you don't have a proper way to communicate between developers, and from each implementation you cannot name. I mean, I've never seen anyone remember a 3 lines description of a single variable, offset of central, like what the hell. So but I would say that the biggest problem is definitely not from here, is first understanding its peculiar structure, why it's so, and also uh how can I say, uh, yeah, understanding the many abuses that are possible with this format because of that structure and because of other things that are not enforced. There's no reference, there's no test case. I mean, the usual symptoms of badly maintained specification. But yeah, the problem is that it's still used everywhere. So abuses of zip are just permanent even nowadays. So a very important thing to understand is that zip was created at a time where you would compress stuff on the fly to floppies. So basically, you have, let's say, your hard disk, and you have floppies. And floppies, for example, floppies on my system, on even though it has PKZip, the floppies were 360 kilobytes, which is small. Like some games like King Quest 5 could be shipped on 40 something floppies, something crazy. It was a very low capacity. The 3.5 inch floppies is actually a bit better, like it was 1.44 megabytes. But yeah, mine were 360 really floppy, the big 5.25 inch floppies. So the thing is, you would start encoding some data, and it would ask you, hey, give me the first floppy, and you would fill it floppies until it has reached all the data it should, the files that it should encode. So basically, it would compress on the fly to a floppy until it was full, then was asking for the next floppy. Then, even if it was changing to the next file or not, it would actually ask you more and more floppy. And on the last floppies, it would write some index, and this index is basically the start of the archive, even if it spans over several files that are on different floppies. So when you wanted to decompress everything, you needed first to install the very last floppy of the batch, and then you would have to it would tell you, okay, now you need to insert floppy number 2, number 3, and so on, in increasing number. So basically, to it would just ask you one extra floppy, maybe compared to the minimum that you should need technically. So it was built with a very awkward structure to minimize the amount of floppy swaps when compressing some or decompressing something on the fly. But still, we still bear that structure today, which is why it's really, really weird. So uh, as you could maybe know already, so it has several structure, and there is one local file header. There is a sequence of local file headers next to each other, even spanning over several volumes, as local file headers for each file that was compressed. The local file headers contain some file information and then the file data in a compressed state. I mean, if compression was used, of course. Then, after the whole sequence of local file headers, then you would have the index, which is a sequence of central directory. So central directory is just some information of the file with pointer to the local file headers across disks. And just the name, not the data anymore, so much smaller. Like and Again, it's a sequence of central directory one after the other. Like the system, the software will know where the first central directory is. It will look for the next central directory right after it. And all this is pointed by the structure that is written last on the last floppy, on the last volume, which is the end of central directory, which is a very small structure. So, and then when it's time to decompress stuff, then first locate the end of central directory, jump to via the end of central directory is small, but in the structure there is an offset. This offset points to the first central directory, and then each central directory can be parsed to actually locate with each one a pointer to each local file header, which contains the file data. Okay, so this is very weird. This is written bottom up, and a lot of abuses can appear. And you will see that these structures, they always start with PK. So the local file header start with PK34, the central directory PK12, and the end of central directory with PK56. But of course, there are more than this, but these are the very basic. Today, we're just playing with the basic structures of zip. Okay, so always PK something, and the start is at the last element of the file, PK56. And now, what's the smallest zip? Because why not? Well, you don't actually need files to be stored, and if there is no file to be stored, then it's still a valid archive. So basically, just the end of central directory, which very unusually would be at the start of the file, and this file, so PK56, and then very small information. Here, the whole thing is empty, no disk number, no start disk number, nothing to store, no sizes. The size is the size of the central directory, so like how many central directories there are, and then the offset to central directory. Here, there is no central directory, and this is a valid zip archive, and it's actually very consistent because it's minimal. It's valid. But as you can see, there is already a little room for abuse, and there is a comment length at the end, 2 bytes. So here you see the last 2 bytes are the command length. Of course, again, these names are not the standard names, right? There is no standard names for the structures of zips, which is crazy. Okay, and now there is a command length. And what happens if you put something else? Well, you can put whatever you want. You can put command length of whatever, and then, okay, stored on 2 bytes, and then you could have payload. This is a valid zip, even though it contains no file, but it already has the ability to store arbitrary data in a standard way. And now you could imagine the immediate problem. What if you put a central directory in the central directory? Which one should be in the central directory commands? And then this is an immediate problem. Which one should you look at it first? Do you go bottom up from the very end of the file? Or because this is stored on 2 bytes, you just look downward from a certain range in memory in the file to locate for PK56. There is no way to make a difference, and that's already the problem of zips, that you could have 2 different central directories, end of central directories, one within the comment of the other, and that's how can I say, that's there is no official way to say this is the right way, this is not the right way, and we don't even have any files yet. Okay, so now, so again, I mentioned with one file you would have this. Oh yeah, but of course, file names are actually present in both the central directory and the local file header, and this can lead to a lot of problems if the file name is different, or if you append another, I mean, you add a new file that overwrites one of the previous ones. What happens? This is the usual. I would say this is the usual problem with archive, but here in zip you have the problem of archive double overlap of file names, but also duplicates of file names in the same structure. Because which one should you take into account, right? If you give it a wrong, if a common vulnerability is one thing checks for the presence of a name, then the actual name that is used for extraction is a different one in the local file header. But it doesn't stop there, because actually with awkward structures, you can even have a local file header name, a Unicode name, and via what is called the extra field, you could even have something like a Mac name. For old school zips only on Mac software platforms, but basically you can end up with at least 4 different file names for the same file, which is crazy. Which is crazy, and then which one you take, and who takes the time to check if there is no potential risk there? You see, you get the idea. So this is a complete zip, and this zip. So again, it has a start, and let's go through it. So the zip, then the disk number, which is usually not used nowadays, the start disk numbers, disk entries, like how many, usually set to 0. Then how many entries of how many central directory you have in this archive. Then the pointer to the size of the central directory. So how many entries, the size of the central directory altogether, and then the offset of the central directory in the file, and then the comment, as I mentioned. But here, let's not abuse it, and let's keep it to 0. Now we point to the pointer from the end of central directory. Here points to this one entry of a central directory, and again, it's called central directory record, which makes it even longer to say. Start with PK12, and then there are versions. So if you're curious about versions, I would recommend a very interesting blog from my colleague Hans. Where are you, Hans? Zip History. Very interesting. HansHQ.net. He has a very interesting blog post about the zip file, the history of zip, and so on. And also, he has a blog post about older versions of all the algorithms used in zip, because zip is so old that it predates the deflate. So the standard deflate is not necessarily the only algorithm in zip. We'll talk about later about zip algorithm in zips, but it's a problem. So now we are at the made version. So again, it could be set to whatever the flags. Sometimes you have a flag that says the um, the flags are not so important. I mean, it depends, but yeah, there's a flag that says this the name is in Unicode and this kind of stuff. UTF-8, quite important when it's 80, if I recall correctly. And then there is compression method, which is very important for many reasons. First, if you have 0, this is a store, like this is raw data. This is not zlib with no compression. This is pure storage, which is very good to embed a payload. I mean, another way to embed a payload, just in a file. Um, as I mentioned, PDF is how can I say, is tolerate, as I mentioned in previous stream, PDF can start after the offset 0 up to 120 or something. Like the whole PDF signature should be in the first first kilobyte. But so basically, if you zip a PDF inside, if you zip a PDF with no compression, then the content of the whole PDF will be stored as is reliably early in the start. So here, the offset for that will be here. So 27. The offset could be at 27 or a bit earlier. And basically, this is a valid PDF that is inside a zip. So basically, if you zip a PDF with no compression at all, storage, then, which is again different from storing with zlib with no compression, because that would still encapsulate the data stored in raw blocks, but still stored with the blocks structures. And so basically, by doing that, you immediately know that the content will be stored identically. And the only thing that will prevent that to work under Adobe is very likely the Adobe reader will blacklist the PK34 signature. But something that I haven't mentioned yet is that the zip is considered valid even when it doesn't start at offset 0, which is another big headache. So now let's go back. So the compression method is 0 for storage. Then it used to be, again, I should go to the blog of Hans because it's actually very good for that. Yeah, there are compression method. Isn't this in this blog? Nope. She started describing not this one. Where do I have? Oh, well, I can just go to mine. So on my GitHub core Kami collision, not this one, not collision proof of concept, sorry. Zip proof of concept, core Kami POCs, zip. Then you have compressions, and I stored a few zips of various compression, including very modern ones that you wouldn't usually use, or the old ones. So usually storage is still in use, the one with the compression number 0. Then shrunk and reduced 1, 2, 3, 4, and implode 3 are usually not used anymore. I'm not even sure if there is a compression 7. That's interesting. You see, I was skipping from 6 to, and then you have compression 8, which is the standard deflate. And if you recall, if I'm not wrong, the PNG is also using 8, or is I'm wrong? Anyway, not only deflate is standard for compression, and it's number 8, but a lot of software only supports, for example, compression 8, like some APK tools. They don't support the whole other compressions at all. And you can sometimes bypass some system by just sending a zip using a different compression. And then you have some very funky compression that is adapted, but I never gave it a try, like PPMD, Wavepack, JPEG, that they have their official number. And if we check if we check the compression names, we will see that deflated. Yeah. Okay. See, compression 7, tokenizing compression algorithm. I have no idea what it is. And you will see that some of these are actually, I've never seen them in the wild, and some are reserved. That's the compression numbers, by the way. So I was able to get a few official ones in my zip archive. And if I recall correctly, thank you, Tabasco I, for providing the zip files. I think he's the one who had, I think it was on a commercial version of WinZip that you could have these compressions, but I'm not sure how you could do it otherwise. Or maybe 7-Zip got it, but some of them are rare because maybe there was even a MP3. Oh yeah, MP3 compression. That's yeah. This standard. Oh, we can abuse that. Interesting. Haha. Because you can easily abuse these standard frames with hash collisions and stuff like this. Interesting, interesting. But sadly, not so standard among users. Zip. Zip with deflate compression 8 is by far the most widespread. But as you again, some of this compression, um, the number is officially defined, but I've never seen the algorithm. Z architecture, so likely mainframe. I'm not sure. ZOS, wow. I'm not sure I've even seen there. Hey, thank you, Iceman. Keep being awesome, Ange. Thank you. I appreciate. Um, so now, compression method, basically small number, usually 00 or 8, and no surprise, just the data that would be here would be compressed with this algorithm. That's all there is. Then there is a few parameters: modification time, modification date, the, the CRC, which is usually not a problem unless you're dealing with collisions. Uh, and there is a very good tool, CRC hack, to actually make very controllable CRC collisions. Yeah, this is something I mentioned in my recent talk, fearsome file format. Let's see. Oops, not this one. Um, that very recently we saw that the ACAR file is detected by some antivirus engine in zip, even when it's encrypted by the size of data. So basically by the size and the CRC. So you can have a CRC collision in 2025 with on the ACAR file, and if you insert a very different signature, a string for with the same length with the same CRC, you would have a false positive via CRC collision in 2025. Oh yeah, whatever. Let's have fun. And then you have the file name length, which is the file name that is embedded in the central directory. And then you have the extra field length, which I will not cover much here, but it has some impact. It's commonly used, and it's also good for abuses, because what is in the extra field, you can also declare whatever you want for your extra field, and then there is no CRC for the extra field. So basically, very good. So, for example, to hide hash collisions. Oh, thanks. Dfarm said that there is a CV7-zip vulnerability last year, CV 2024-11477, and apparently it has something to do with this standard. Thanks, I didn't know. Awesome, I will check it out. Again, what did we do with this standard? We did, let's go. We can still go there. Hash collision, so core Kami collisions, and you go not to the free page, but you go to the hash coins page, and we played with this standard, and we did this. We, as in Retroid and I, we did this. Or no, okay, he did the this standard one, but LZ4 also used the same frame system because it's made by the same author. So it's very same manipulation possibilities. And does is there LZ4? Just this standard? There's no LZ4 in zip. Okay, but anyway. These standard frames make it very easy to manipulate the content that is going to be archived. I mean, that it's going to be processed by the expansion, by the unarchiving, which means basically you can insert a lot of collisions inside an archive, and the content will change without you change the content of the compressed file to be decompressed, but the things stay valid. And it's so fun to play with that David added 653 collisions to a very complex header that I describe here. and it's pretty fun. So yeah, thanks Z standard 7. Okay, I don't know the whole Z standard collision. Um, Actually, I think not, no, not I think zippoc. Do I have Kokami pix? Let's see if I go to my binary posters. I think I have a Z standard poster. If I made it public, did I? No, no standard. This standard, yeah. Okay, so let's see. This standard with skippable frame. So I don't know if you can see. So it's very simple. That's just a single Z standard frame header. This is an empty frame. Oh no, this is just a Z standard file. Sorry, and this is the same, but there is an empty frame. That is a skippable frame, and this skippable frame can store whatever arbitrary data. So as you see, the same magic, but it can already start. It's just a sequence of frame, which is a bad idea for file formats. And so basically, you can add skippable frames. And another crazy thing is that skippable frame have a variable byte if you want. So the question mark here can be a different number if you want. That will still be a skippable frame. So basically, a way to store arbitrary data in a um, in a content to be decompressed. And you can of course apply that on an existing Z standard file, and you can then you can manipulate that, for example, with hash collisions. And LZ4 is roughly the same principle of magic and skippable frames. Thanks for the suggestion, Defarm. So where was I? Z standard storage compression methods. Yeah, so now what's next? There's not much left to do. The extra field, okay. The extra field could be stored arbitrary data. It has a use. It's probably very underused. Again, the file that I mentioned earlier here, the Unicode name and the, as you can see, the name, there is only the local file header file name and the central directory file name. And the extra names are provided by what is called this extra field, which is a sequence. So you can store several extra fields, standard ones and non-standard ones, and a bit like PNG chunk. If you add your own extra field with arbitrary identifier, they will be ignored. So zips should really be explored, especially because the list of extra fields is probably crazy, even though there is a tiny list here in the up note. Extra field, extensive. So it's a standard. So here are the standard mappings of extra field. Oh yeah. See, size, original size. It's weird that you still have to manipulate a text file in 2020. I mean, from 2022 in 2025. Anyway, so now let's go back. We have the extra field. Then they have just the file name, the offset to the matching local file header, then the file name, and then if there is one, the extra field, and if there is one, the file command, because there is archive command, but there is also per file command. And then basically there's a pointer to the local file header, which is very similar. You can see that it has a lot of similarities: needed version, flags, compression method, mod time, CRC, compression size. All this file name length is a duplicate in central directory in the matching, and should likely have the same value in central directory. What happens if they are different depends on your implementation, I guess. Even the file name, of course, is just here, file name length. So very, very similar structure. Local file header is more or less the same, except that after all this, then there is the original, the compressed data. And then the compressed data. But again, the compressed data. And after the compressed data, there is the extra field of the file. So there can be an extra field in the local file header, in the central directory, and there can be comments in the central directory and in the archive. So there is a lot of ranges to abuse. Another thing is that nothing prevents you to move. The local file headers should follow each other. I mean, no, sorry, I'm wrong. um, the local file headers are pointed by central directories. So basically, the local file headers can be in different places, and a central directory are following each other. But besides, you have a lot of freedom to put a bit them everywhere where you want in the file. So it's really like you could move stuff around, and you can make room for whatever you want. But why use arbitrary data like a cave, how do you say, cavity, when you could put that in a extra field or in a dummy file inside the archive, with a proper name and a proper CRC? Why not? So you see, it's extremely modifiable, but in practice, the central of direct and the structure is still the same. Like, it still has to go backward. Uh, Another thing that is commonly misunderstood is that, as I mentioned, the when you take a file, so let's take a small zip. When you take a small file and when you insert some data just before it, so here I insert 16 bytes, then there are two versions of it. So basically, this is still a valid file, no matter what was before the file. And actually, again, the file is stored from the end, right? Is parsed from the end. This is the end of central directory. So basically, you go backward. And then there are two ways. Either you keep the same offsets, and the offset is relative to the first occurrence of the first local file header, which should tell the start of the archive. But there is another way that usually this is seen as taking too long to parse. So very often the offset are actually adjusted so that they are absolute in the file, which is a problem. So they are absolute in the file. So basically, the offset of archive, even though there is a lot of data before, the offset would be adjusted to not point to from the very beginning of the file. So for example, the offset of the end of central directory here would be, the central directory would be 38, but in absolute it's 448. So basically, some parsers will throw a warning if the offset are relative and not absolute. And so basically, and you can fix that very easily. There are tools for that, standard tools for that. But the thing is, when you carve out, if here this is 38, and if instead I put, sorry, 404, so 448, 448, that's the offset of my central directory. Then now if I if I extract this zip from the file, then the software could say, hey, this file is incorrect, because now if I remove this block again, then there is nothing else at 448 anymore. So basically, extracted zip from their with adjusted offset, so absolute offset of the file, extracted from the file, they suddenly have invalid file, which can be a problem even nowadays when people are not careful, that the same zip can exist with let's put almost an infinite amount of, a large amount of offsets adjusted depending on how much data was put before. And this is not a trick, but this is just a way that, again, this file earlier had a very different offset, and now let's restore it, so that it works. So it's pretty odd, but this is another consequence of this overall structure, and you can put it everywhere in the file, and let's make things faster and get the offsets absolute, and fix the offset to be absolute. And now when you take out the file, then it's not valid anymore. Weird, but yeah, this is still relevant nowadays. Are there any questions? I'm just talking too much. Okay, no questions. How much time? Oop, 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 oop. Okay, 35 minutes. That's already true. What about multi-part zip? So actually, I won't cover them too much. I mentioned them very lightly earlier, but I actually provide a few. Where is it in my archive? So here you have a few volume which were made volume zip, which were made of actual um, uh, on actual implementations of zip. So there's nothing special. It's just that the um, where is my stuff? Just you will have some specific disk number, and that's about it. That's how they can differentiate each other. Um, Another thing, what did I mention? So they, you used to be able to, with zip, um, to store files in an absolute path relative to the drive, and you could store the drive as something. But if you notice, this format only enables you to store files, nothing like directory or nothing else, So basically, you would have the possibility to store the file of C underscore drive that is empty, which to define an absolute path, and this is an official uh, zip file with a C drive that acts as a marker. So another case of empty file marker. If you saw my talk from first from CCC, another use case of the empty file in a standard way, but not so common, right? Um, what else did I want to? Yeah, so this is stored here. So drive, the old way to store drive when they're stored. And then there are a few other things with data descriptor. These are NT-ACLs, this NTFS, high precision time. Those are used in empty extra fields. And this is kind of documented, but yeah. And of course, we played a lot with possibilities of abuses, algorithms. Um there is the old crypto that is used, um, that is used, that is very weak, and the new crypto, I'm not sure it's really commonly used. I'm not sure zip compression encryption is very strong. I'm not sure if AES encryption, zip encryption is widespread. I wouldn't use probably zip for storing private information. Um, what else? Yeah, I think I'm running out of things to say for this first overview. Um, any questions on your side, people? Yeah. Hi, Verneri. So, yeah, any questions on your side? Um, there are plenty of ways to manipulate zip. You can add data. Tips and tricks will be in some next. Hi, Mateusz. Tips and tricks will be in the same next session. What kind of tips and tricks for zip? I mean, zip is pretty obvious. You can put data before, you can put data a bit everywhere in the file. You can even add dummy files inside the archive. Uh, you can put even data inside the archive command, so kind of after the end of the archive, which is a way that we used in a Poker GTFO when we wanted to hide some data that was after the zip, and to stop software from complaining that the zip is not at the end of the file. We would add a comment. So for example, we would do this. We take our file. This is our end of central directory. This is the comment stuff. And we want to hide some data, whatever it is, I don't know. And for that, you just insert a 0 before, and then you say this length is 8. So let's declare an 8 comment of a length of 8. And then when extracting the file, the comment is displayed automatically in standard command line tools, and they will stop at 0. So basically, you hide your binary in a very trivial way. We use that in some issues of POC or GTFO. Yeah, zip bombs. Yeah, I have to cover that too. But yeah, so basically, zip is super manipulatable. There is plenty of room for abuse everywhere. the typical problem is that you have the duplicity of information of the CRCs. And so basically, whatever you put in the file has to be uh, the CRC has to be valid, and the CRC has to be valid in both places before and after the data, which is why putting data in the extra field that is not, or in a command which are not regulated by um, we just don't have any CRC or complex length the declaration. Here, again, the length is declared twice, the compressed and decompressed length. So basically, use the extra field or comments or extra gap space if you want, but you don't need to abuse stuff with gap space when you have zips. It's very flexible. And yeah, just to for the reference, some, because if you notice, nowadays there is no more multi-floppies archive. So basically, you could just start off the very beginning of the file. There is a PK34, that's a local file header. Let me get the end of the name of the file, or let me get the content, or skip to the next file. And so basically, some software like Ruby, if I recall correctly, we did a presentation uh, with Ginvail Caldwin on ambiguous files, schizophrenic files, or he did an even better one on the crazy zips. So basically, some zip parser would look for the end of central directory from the start and then parse bottom up. Some zip parsers look for the central directory, end of central directory from the bottom, which means they can be embedded in another end of central directory command. Some software look directly for local file header at the start of the file, and they ignore the central directory and end of central directory. So basically, you can put a lot of different content in the file, and different parsers will see different things. So zip is a quite nice nightmare. And um, yeah, that's a lot of abilities, no enforcement whatsoever. People still writing zip parsers randomly and still having plenty of bugs. And then there is the extra problem that when you have a corrupted zip, many tools will say, hey, it looks like a zip, it has the right extension and so on, or a zip based document like office open office files and so on. But this zip is corrupted, let me recover it for you. And basically, you can attack people, you can infect people with a corrupted zip that will end up being open and working on the target's computer, because it will be silently recovered by the software that is opening it. So the usual. But yeah, that's um that's all I have for you today. And yeah, thanks for attending. Thanks for all the nice comments. Yeah, I will have to go for zip bombs to first. Yeah, I will have to go for such kind of complex files. But first, we need to stop. Um, you need to stop. We need to stop with polyglots. The next stream will be about polyglots. Let's make our first polyglot. Zip carving. So the question for Mahmoud is, I missed the beginning, but are you going to cover zip carving in the future session? Again, I'm not sure there is something to mention about zip carving. You don't, I mean, extracting zips from files or making, uh, extracting zip from extra files. Yeah, well, you locate all the structures, I guess. But the thing is, there is a problem of absolute offsets, which can be tricky if you forget at what offset you found the zip. And then there is the problem that this is a very simple zip. Nowadays, there are a lot more structures for a zip file that is beyond this. So it can be a lot more complex. Yeah, okay. Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Here in this case, it's pretty easy. You just actually even need to just locate the local file header to be able to extract the original file, right? It's too easy. But modern zips are sometimes a lot more complex with a lot, not just these three structures. So yeah, that would be an entirely different conversation, and I'm not even sure I'm fully ready on the zip side of things yet. But yeah, maybe in the future, who knows? So thanks for your attention, I guess. Uh, no more questions. I mean, I guess unless you have more questions. And yeah, next stream should be making our first polyglot. PNG, we can now do PNG PDF and zip PDF and PNG zip. Yay! Thanks. Thank you. Thanks a lot. And thanks for attending. And yeah, see you next stream. So likely tomorrow evening on Polyglots. Bye.